Hi there, folks. I'm going to do a little bit of an experiment here with my MEC 600 Junior Mark V shotshell loader in 20 gauge. I've had this press for quite a while, and at one point in time I purchased a primer feed to go on it, which I think has been a valuable addition to speeding up the loading process, but I've never actually quantified how much of a gain using the primer feed was compared to not using the primer feed. So I'm going to do a little bit of an experiment here. I'm going to load 25 shells using the primer feed, and then I'm going to load 25 shells with the primer feed disconnected, and I'm going to time both those to see what difference there is in the speed of production. Because if you load any number of shells, if you're a target shooter, you know that you'll go through an awful lot of shells in the course of a year. It's not uncommon for clay target shooters to shoot 5 to 15,000 shells a year, so you can spend quite a bit of time in front of your press making shells, and it's just interesting to see, at least to myself, it's interesting to see what the difference in production speed is. So I'll do the first test with the primer feed connected. I've got the machine, I've got powder in the powder bottle, I've got shot in the shot bottle, I've got a sufficient quantity of primers in the primer feed, I've got the correct bushing, the correct bar, I've got 25 hulls counted out here. I've got my wads nearby, and I've got a block here to set the shells in as I finish them up. So just a moment, and I'm going to get the timer set up here, and we'll time it with my phone. Just a moment. Okay, I've got the timer application up on my phone here, and we're going to hit the start button, and I'll probably end up fast forwarding through this loading process because it's going to be kind of a dull thing to watch me load an entire box of shells. Anyway, off we go. I'm going to take a moment to mention that it's always a bad idea when you're loading ammunition to try to load with speed in mind. The thing that you should be remembering when you're loading shells for any purpose, and with any kind of tools, that you should be loading your shells with an outlook towards quality and safety. You definitely don't want to hurry yourself to the point where you're making mistakes, you're basically screwing up your reloads. So try not to hurry too much. One of those things that's important is to stage your components in a logical fashion. For instance, this machine sizes the shells on the right hand side, so I put my empty hulls on the right hand side, put my wads on the left hand side, and that way everything's close at hand and you have the most maximum efficiency of movement. And it's small things like that that make a big difference when you're loading shells. Those little things can really speed you up an awful lot. And it's also good too, before you start to load, to make sure that you've got all your powder bottle full, your shot bottle full, you got enough primers at hand. Because if you run low on anything, it tends to really throw a monkey wrench into the speed at which you can produce shells. So it's good to make sure before you start that you've got all those things looked after. As you can see, the 600 Junior is actually a fairly quick tool. It's interesting, some of the comments I've had on some Lee loader videos, those hand tool box sets, people comment about how, geez man, you should get yourself a quicker loading tool than that. Well, these machines are where I load the vast majority of the shells that I load. I load it on these MECs. I've got a few of these different MECs in different gauges, and I have one progressive MEC for loading 12 gauge shells. And believe me, that's really the way to fly if you're going to load a lot of shells. You can certainly go through the components quickly and make a big pile of shells. Being as it's winter time, I find it's a good time to load ammunition for use in the summer, although I still do shoot skeet in the winter time. But summertime there always seems to be something else on the go, so sometimes it's hard to get down here to get the loading done. So it's nice to get ahead in the winter time, get some cases of shells ahead for the summer, so that when you want to go, you just have to grab some boxes of shells and go to the gun club and enjoy your time there and not have to worry about loading up shells. I've heard people say that they don't have time to load shells. Well, I guess I can't comment for those people. They might have busy lives. But it really doesn't take that much of an investment in time to keep yourself in a modest number of shells. Okay, almost done. Last shell of the 25. And there we go. 7 minutes and 13.3 seconds to load 25 shells. That's keeping a fairly good pace, but not trying to rush it too much. I think that's probably a fairly realistic picture of what it takes to load a box of shells in this machine with the primer feed connected. So now I'm going to disconnect the primer feed, and then we'll load the same number of shells, except this time we're going to put the primers in manually, and I'm just going to see what the difference is. So there's my 25 shells. So I'm going to disconnect that feed, and we'll start this process all over again. Okay, we're on to the second part of this experiment. I've counted out 25 more empty hulls. Got a box of primers out here, and I've placed a number of them on the bench so that I can put them in manually into the machine. And I've disconnected the auto primer feed so that won't function and that won't feed a primer in automatically. So I'll see how long it takes to load a box of shells with that extra step of putting the primers in the machine. So we've got our timer zeroed, and we'll start. Last shell. Not much difference. 7 minutes and 36 seconds to load the box of shells, feeding the primers manually into the machine. I'm sort of surprised at that. Now, I think I'm going to run the first part of this test again and hook the primer feed back up and run it again, because I think some of the difference is probably due to the fact that during the first box I was kind of getting my rhythm going there. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to try another box with the primer feed hooked up again, and we'll see what we do now that I'm kind of warmed up, because it's a little unfair. You do develop a rhythm with this stuff once you get rolling. So I'm going to try that first one again. Okay, second timed run with the primer feed connected. Now that I've kind of got warmed up, I'm thinking that maybe I'll do a little better on time with this one, but we shall see. There we go. Not an awful lot of difference. 6 minutes and 57.6 seconds. So even being warmed up a bit didn't make an enormous difference in the speed of production. Interesting. So I guess having a primer feed on your single stage MEC is not really a terrific time saver, but I still prefer it because it does eliminate one hand motion, and simpler is usually better with the operation of any equipment. And plus you're not handling the primers, they're not sliding around on the work surface, they're out of the way in the machine. This run would have been a little bit quicker because if everything had gone right, but when I reconnected the primer feed, I think it was a little bit, took a little while for it to settle in, and I had one primer that kind of got cockeyed in there, so I had to open the machine up and open the primer feed up and rearrange that. So that probably took, you know, 10 or 15 seconds off, but not a big deal either way. So anyway, hopefully that's of some interest to those of you who load shot shells and maybe who do some trap, skeet, or sporting clay shooting. Anyway, talk to you later, guys.